Zerah, their seed, there, see, da. And therefore that means that Genesis 3:15, when it speaks to a woman, it's not speaking of a virgin birth. But how flawed of a concept this is when you understand Hebrew.
Shalom, and welcome to False Messiah, where we expose Christianity's distortion of the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh. In today's episode, we'll be going through more of Courtney Smith's arguments from her video on Genesis 3:15, which is linked in the description below.
And so he takes you to Genesis 16 because he wants you to believe that it's the same word used there as is used in Genesis 3:15 in regards to the prophecy of a virgin birth.
Genesis 3:15 doesn't say anything about a virgin birth. Even if you mistranslate the word Alma in Isaiah 7:14 to mean virgin, the word Alma is not used in Genesis 3:15. The word used there is Isha, which refers to a married woman, not a virgin.
Okay? So here's the problem with that. It's not the same word. It's not the same Hebrew word at all.
That is false. It actually is the same word, just with two different suffixes. One is Zarah, which is her seed, and one is Zarech, which is your seed.
Hebrew speakers, follow along with me. Hebrew reads from right to left, not left to right. So you see the big, bold word, okay? That's Zerah.
No, it's Zarah.
Okay, there's two words to the right of that. The one in the middle, nope. The second one is the one I want you to focus on. Zerach.
No, it's Zaracha.
The k at the end. Now these words look similar, but they are very different and they have very different meanings. The first one that is not in bold means your seed, as in anyone that you speak to. That's male or female.
That is incorrect. Zaracha is masculine and so can only be talking about a male's seed.
Okay? If you look at the big bold word, that is her seed, and that is the only time it is used in the Bible.
And therefore what?
So did you hear that? Well, depending on how you pronounce the vowels, zar, ach, etc., so on and so forth, that is absolutely not the same word mentioned in Genesis 3:15 when speaking to the woman there.
It actually is the same word. It's called in Hebrew a shoresh, which means a root word. It is one of the most basic rules in Hebrew grammar, which I learned in first grade. Courtney seems to be seriously lacking in the Hebrew language.
Okay? So I want you to understand what his position is. His position is, hey, look, Hagar is being spoken to, and she is being told that she's going to have descendants. Okay? Zerah, their seed, there, see, da. And therefore that means that Genesis 3:15, when it speaks to a woman, it's not speaking of a virgin birth. But how flawed of a concept this is when you understand Hebrew.
Courtney is unbelievably ignorant of Hebrew that a Hebrew-speaking Christian had to correct her mistranslation of the Hebrew.
Also, how flawed of a concept this is when you understand that it is the only time in Genesis 3:15, literally the only occurrence throughout the entire Hebrew Bible, where the woman is directly told that her seed, the ending suffix, okay, the suffix meaning her, your, female, you, her, not just yours as in anyone, male, female, whatever, as in you're going to have descendants.
That is also false. Genesis 16 says Zarech, which is also feminine, as well as Zarech in Genesis 24. It only has a different suffix because Genesis 3:15 is in third person, whereas Genesis 16 and 24 is in second person. Courtney seems to not know anything about Hebrew grammar.
But this woman in Genesis 3:15 is not going to have a man involved. There's going to be no man involved. That's why it's called her seed.
It's called her seed because it is in third person. Third person is employed when you are talking to someone about someone else. In this case, God is talking to the serpent about the woman. This is really basic grammar which is used in every language, not just Hebrew. Courtney seems to be ignorant of even basic grammar.
What it is saying is very clear. Hey, her seed is going to be the seed that eventually will be the Messiah. That line. That is the promised Messiah found back in Genesis.
Genesis 3:15 does not say that her seed will be the Messiah. It says that God will put enmity between you, the serpent, and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and that her seed will crush your head while you will bruise his ankle. It does not say that her seed is the Messiah. We don't have any other passage in the Bible that describes the Messiah as one who will crush the head of the serpent. Not to mention that the woman, or Ha'isha in the verse, refers to Eve, as that is who the woman refers to throughout Genesis 2 and 3. Yet Eve did not have a child who became the Messiah. But Courtney's interpreting the woman out of his contextual narrative, which is about Eve, and instead applies it to the mother of the Messiah. Courtney is doing what's called eisegesis, which, as opposed to exegesis, which attempts to interpret the text according to what the text itself says, eisegesis is an attempt to interpret the text according to your own assumptions and presuppositions. In this case, Courtney is approaching the text with a messianic understanding and reading that understanding into the text. It is a dishonest approach to scripture and doesn't bring us any closer to truth.
Okay? And if you would speak to any other woman, you would say zerach.
No, you would say zarech.
With a k at the back, okay? Not a ah, as in a feminine female sound at the end. There is a difference. And if you know Hebrew, you know he is lying to you.
If you know Hebrew, you know that Courtney doesn't know what she's talking about.
Making up something either to buy and sell to those who have no clue of Hebrew, or he literally doesn't know enough about his own Bible. And I don't think it's the second one.
Or a third possibility is that Rabbi Singer is correct and that Courtney doesn't know enough Hebrew to realize that she's making a fool of herself with her ignorance of Hebrew. This is most likely the case, as she can't pronounce a single Hebrew word correctly and is unfamiliar with basic Hebrew grammar and even English grammar.
And why his position is incorrect and our, i.e. the New Testament's position, is correct.
Again, this is a church tradition, not a New Testament interpretation, because Genesis 3:15 isn't quoted in the New Testament. Genesis 3:15 is not used as a reference to Jesus until the 2nd century by the Christian philosopher Justin Martyr in his dialogue with Trypho.
So using a picture from his own video, you will see in red where he put these two totally different Hebrew words, although they share the same root, they are different.
If they share the same root, then they are not two totally different words. This is like saying that the English word run and running are two totally different words. It is the same word with just different suffixes because the context is different.
So why is it important that they are different? Well, because his entire point is that the kaf ending speaks to a female, therefore the hey ending means that it's not a virgin birth prophecy.
Even Hebrew-speaking Christian scholars agree with Rabbi Singer on this and think that Courtney's interpretation is misleading.
Yeah, and not only that, there's other passages.
There are 3 other passages in the Torah that refer to the seed of women.
Specifically speak about the seed of women. So Eve wasn't the only one.
Right, and so this is the way to, say, refute the interpretation that says that this is about the virgin birth.
So what is our response?
Well, here's our response, Golan.
First of all, we agree. Right?
We agree, right? I mean, I think that I think to say that this passage is referring to the virgin birth is not a reflection on the New Testament's handling of the text.
Yeah.
I think it's a reflection of bad Christian
So
interpretation
in
of
other
the
words,
passage.
the New Testament doesn't use Genesis 3:15 to prove the virgin birth,
No,
right?
the New Testament never makes that claim. And interesting, let's just kind of look at it. So, Eve actually says that God gives her a seed in place of Abel.
In 4:25,
so
right?
she has a seed,
Yep.
a child, a son. Hagar, she has a seed. I will greatly multiply your seed. Rebecca has a
Also.
seed, and may your seed possess the gate of those who hate him. And so here, I would argue that the refutation is not a refutation against the New Testament's interpretation,
It's like
and
a
not our interpretation.
Misinterpretation.
It's just a refutation of an interpretation that
Exactly.
needs to be refuted.
Exactly.
Because we disagree with that interpretation too.
Exactly.
But clearly, the hey ending is only used once in the entire Hebrew Bible.
And so what does that prove? She is using an argument from silence, which is generally a very weak form of logic, but she doesn't even tell us what this argument proves. In Genesis 3:15, it is the only time that the feminine hey suffix is used because it is the only time that a woman's seed is referred to in third person.
All right, so slowing down the picture, I want you to be able to get a really good look. Notice the word in bold is different than the first word all the way to the right. Totally different word.
No, it is not a totally different word. It is the same word with just a different suffix because one is in second person and the other is in third person. But she keeps making this very obvious mistake.
And considering if he knows anything about suffixes, he knows that a final kaf is a second person singular.
No, it is not singular. The word zaracha in Genesis 3:15 is used multiple times in the Hebrew Bible in a plural context. Although, to be fair, she is not the first Christian to make this mistake. Paul makes the same mistake in Galatians 3:16 in thinking that the word zaracha, when speaking to Abraham, is singular and so therefore must be referring to a single descendant of Abraham, which is Jesus, even though it is clear from every context that it's used in that it's plural.